Hey, so this video is long overdue. There's so many things that have happened since we last talked about. I don't know what to say, but first, let's look at one very obvious thing that you probably have all immediately noticed, and that is the improved voice quality and the bad image quality. I am using my webcam, unfortunately, for this because my camera went down right as soon as I just had the microphone getting in operational, and I do mean literally right as soon as I got the microphone operational. So, life, if it's not one thing, it's the next. But I just wanted to make one real quick video here, just kind of updating you with what's been going on so I can kind of give you a direct, some ideas of what's going to happen in the future. This whole channel isn't meant to be a vain blog about my life. Some people do that in their YouTube channels, and I don't want it to be that way. But I do have to kind of just give you a little explanation of what's been going on with me over the last some months. It's not really an excuse as to why I've slacked on the channel, but I've just been pretty distracted. I have been through 3 different job roles now in the time span of roughly 1 year. I moved to Columbus for a new job role with my company, JP Morgan. It was kind of an entry level wealth management role, and the role I had before this was kind of a fraud specialist kind of role. But to be honest with you, it was a step up, and it went horribly though for the first year. It was probably the hardest year I've had in any job in my life. The senior associates didn't want me there, and I know a lot of people didn't like my video about Ryan Howard being my favorite Office character. But that's kind of why I made that video, is because I kind of relate to the struggles of his character from that TV show in the early seasons, not as he becomes a douchebag later on. Because that's really more typical of sometimes life in the corporate world. There's just a lot of people that are always just there to kind of bat you down the second you move into a new job role. And finally, after about a year, I had to transfer out because they were going to let me go at the end of the year, even after what had been the hardest I'd worked at any job in my life. And then I did get a very good new role as a client service specialist within JP Morgan, for which I had to pass the SIE and Series 7 exam. And admittedly, I kind of underestimated the SIE exam, which it's not that hard of an exam. But I actually did not pass it by just 1 point. And JP Morgan policy mandated I was beat out the next day on unpaid leave, and I had to find another position in the company within 60 days. Otherwise, I was going to be permanently out. So obviously, that was a bit of a crisis, and a pretty embarrassing and frustrating one at that, because this literally was just one question difference on an exam. But that being said, it is my fault. I should have studied harder for it, and I kind of paid the price. But luckily, I got a new offer with Morgan Stanley. It's only a little further commute from where I am, but I don't have to move or anything. It's the same position as the one I had with JP Morgan before. It's a client service associate, in which I will be dealing, I think they said, with like people who work with various tech companies like Google and Amazon, and helping them with various orders that they have in regards to some of their products that they have with Morgan Stanley. But it's an interesting role, and I have to pass the SIE and Series 7 finance licensing exams here as well. But I don't start that position until March 27th, so I've had a little bit of downtime between now and then. And I kind of just wanted to tell you all this so you would kind of just know why I've been just a little bit, flummoxed over the last, some months. It's, again, really not an excuse as to why the channel isn't going well, because I guess you could say it's just more you're just so distracted that you forget about other things. But anyways, that's been what's kind of been going on with me, and I apologize, for the many delays and distractions here. But one thing I kind of wanted to also talk about here is there's been one interesting thing that happened with me. Of course, as many of you know, I'm an atheist. And some years ago, my brother asked me to read C.S. Lewis' book, Surprised by Joy, and I agreed. But in exchange, I made the deal with him that I make with all Christians, and that is that he had to read God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything by Christopher Hitchens. Now, I don't agree with every view of Christopher Hitchens, and sometimes I think he is a little bit almost too negative on almost every form of religion in his book, but he does a pretty good job of overviewing just the general problems religion has caused throughout history, which is why I like people to start with that one, because it was the one that essentially turned me into an atheist. And, 1 second. My brother, these are his notations on Christopher Hitchens' book. All of these are full page to page. I can't really Sorry, I'm trying to hold the microphone and do it simultaneously. I'm still new to this microphone. I know my videos still suck, but my point just is did a lot of work on it, and I'm pretty impressed when I read it. With the level of effort he put into it. That's certainly a lot better than my parents, who just basically bullied and tried to personally attack me and didn't even bother to ask me why I was an atheist. But he comes from a fundamentalist Christian school like I did for 13 years. He's had a lot of the same experiences that I have. So I was a little bit interested. However, as I've already read through all of his notes, it's been a little shocking to me because, my brother's a relatively smart guy. He just finished a bachelor's in computer engineering. He works for the Department of Defense. But the thing is his notes are almost just kind of depressing because he really just argues with Hitchens gratuitously throughout the book about things that really aren't positions that should be argued, and I also was surprised that his views are much more conservative than I ever realized they were. My brother is still a fundamentalist Christian, and he, in the sense that he believes the Bible is the literal word of a God. He believes that I don't know how else to say it. He believes that the world was better off in times past, or at least comparable to modern times, because of Christianity's good influence, and just basically the whole gist of what you'll find your average, very conservative Christian believes. And for a person that's actually had more secular influence in his life than I had in mine, it's really quite surprising that he still has these views, But what's also just disappointing as I read through it is his kind of refusal to admit some basic common ground that some atheists and Christians even have, because he wants to take Christopher Hitchens down in the book. There's really not, there should be some things that shouldn't be argued between atheists and Christians. I mean, I hate to, for those who are Christians watching this, there are some things that you just have to kind of concede to atheists that we've just learned over time. Okay, to try to say that religion is not responsible for a lot of problems that have occurred in the past, such as times when leaders made themselves into god kings of their nations, such as times when religion allied itself to regional or sectarian conflicts and intensified them. Now, you can make the case maybe that it was not the sole cause of them, and I would argue it was one of the primary causers, but you cannot make the case that it wasn't involved at all. It was definitely a causal factor. And unfortunately, I'm very sad to say my brother, throughout his many, many notes here, basically just argues that one point over and over and over again. Like whenever, for instance, when the Japanese treated Emperor Hirohito as a god, that is not a common belief anymore whatsoever among Shintoists in Japan. However, it was for a while in Japan a common belief, and it was practiced. And I'm not, that's just a historical fact, whether you like it or agree with it or not, And to deny it is almost just being gratuitously difficult, because you just can't stand the fact that the other side can show that religion is really somewhat of a dangerous thing, And my brother's a smart guy and a nice guy, but it just kind of affirms to me, that really a lot of things when it comes down to this, the atheist-Christian divide are not always just purely like a person's intelligence. Some of it, it comes down to being willfully willing to reconsider your own perspective, your own views, and just sometimes conscience. I don't know exactly how to describe it. To be honest, I don't know what sets me apart from my other family members, because they're smart. My mom's a dentist. My dad's an accountant and with an advanced degree. My brother's a, engineer. He's a computer engineering major. I'm a finance and accounting major, but they really refuse to even reconsider their views on almost anything. And to me, that's just a very hard thing to understand, because I recognize that my views are probably even partially incorrect now. And I recognize that as a kid, that there had to be some things I was not right about. And it sounds arrogant. I don't know if it sounds arrogant. I don't know what it sounds like. But to be honest with you, it just almost makes me feel like a genius or just insanely frustrated, one of the two. When I listen to, the rantings of some fundamentalist Christians who are actually relatively intelligent individuals who are just looking to win the debate rather than reconsider their own viewpoint. Because there's just some things you have to acknowledge, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or an atheist, as long as you're a sane, rational person. The idea that, certain Islamic states don't allow freedom of or freedom from religion. It's just a simple fact. It is not necessarily something that is just an atheist talking point. And if you don't believe me, go to Atheist Republic and listen to Armin. I don't know how you pronounce his last name exactly, Navari, but whatever the case is, he was from Iran, and he is now an atheist YouTube channel person, and he had to flee for his life, and or at the very least, he would have spent some time in jail if he'd been in Iran practicing his views, Now, again, this doesn't have to be a point of contention between atheists and Christians and atheists and Muslims. There's a lot of Muslims out here who would probably wholeheartedly agree with me that these kind of things are wrong and evil, but unfortunately, they won't stand up to the conservative Muslims in their country, or they're much more content to stand up to atheists or to liberal Christians who are both, more the ones trying to work against these just purely wrong and clearly sinister elements of religion in the modern world, but I don't know. Sometimes this is why this issue frustrates me and why I don't think I want it to be a huge governing one in my life. But, let me put it this way. Can I just, I want to end this on a positive note and kind of explain to you why I'm talking about this. I'm a relatively educated person, but one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is that education does not equate to intelligence or being informed or conscience or any of those things. Because to be honest, my brother, as he demonstrates in his many notes, and I do respect his effort, but it's, a lot of what he writes is just very, ignorant. And it's intelligently made points that are made in a very have a very ignorant basis, because he doesn't ever reconsider his views on almost anything and refuses to think about almost anything. And if you're a person that is not educated, I don't let anybody ever condescend to you for not having a degree in something, or telling you that your views on politics, religion, or anything are unfounded because you don't have as many degrees as they do, or as much education from as good of a university or whatever as they do. Because, one thing I have learned for certain throughout life is that the only thing your degree matters a little bit for is it helps you a little bit in your profession. If if you work for a bank, it does help be a finance major in college, and it helps to go to a school that specializes in finance or accounting. And that's not going too far. It doesn't make you a genius, and it doesn't automatically mean you're going to pass every test, as I learned here on my SIE exam. But it helps, And the same is true, I'd imagine, with having a degree in theology or philosophy, when you're talking about religion. It probably helps to have a background, but, it does not automatically necessitate that a person is better informed, and especially if their degree doesn't relate to the topic that they're discussing. So I guess that's what I just wanted to end this on, as a note of saying that if you're somebody that, I'm not the most degreed person in the world myself. I have a bachelor's, but I didn't finish my master's. Never ever let somebody, be intimidated by the education credentials of a person, or their perceived intellectual prowess, because, if they can't relate it in a way to you that makes sense, then that is on them, And a lot of people let their degrees really just translate into bigger egos, and they let it undercut them from being actually sane or rational people. And, I just wanted to say here that, that's the thing I've learned as I've gotten older in life, is that education is not a bad thing, but you should always, defer to people who actually make sense with their points and seem to be intelligently thinking it out, rather than people who just seem to be trying to make the most advanced arguments they can and the most confusing arguments, and basically are just obsessed with, talking you down and winning the debate, And that goes for all viewpoints: atheist, Christian, Muslim, Democrat, Republican, whatever, So anyways, I wanted to end this on a positive note. Maybe I was jumping around a little, and I will have the camera back up soon too. I'll eventually have a video with both the working microphone and camera, but for now, I just wanted to kind of talk about, some things going on and, related to the atheist Christian dynamic. And other than that, just thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.